Welcome to the podcast that buffs your Hearthstone game. This is Velen's Chosen.
Not all who wander are lost.
Hello and welcome to Velen's Chosen. Greeting, Visionaries. It's good to see you. It's good to be back for one more week before I head out to Japan. It's been great. I'm your host, NotRobMay, and welcome to the podcast geared to buff your Hearthstone game. We exist to help you stay competitive on the ladder, whether it be wild or standard, and not break that bank of yours or dust all of your cards. So we're going to talk gameplay. We talk some deck construction. Sometimes we'll talk arena. Not today. We're actually talking about going back to the basics. We're going to cover jumping into Hearthstone, day one type stuff today. And then we're also going to transition you into the mid game to get you kind of up to snuff on your intermediate knowledge, as well as covering two really cool hunter decks. Joining me today, we have Andrew Brown.
I just want to go on record saying I don't think it's ever going to help you get better at Hearthstone to dust all your cards. I'm just going to throw it out there. My opinion.
But it's okay if you dust all the druid
basic,
ones.
bro.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes. But not all of them. I don't think
Evemartyn and Evemartyn joining us from the rafters of taking down druid inside of your collection. What's up?
You know what? I will honestly say there have been a very few times where I regretted that, where I was like, oh, that's a new one. Oh, I kind of want to try it. And then it kind of didn't pan out anyway, and it didn't work out. Like the beast druid that was out there for a little bit never really hit competitive anyway. Yeah.
And I did watch a pro player last night trolling up the ranks with a Cthulhu druid, so it's strong against warrior, and man is warrior prevalent.
And I watched a video yesterday with Strife Crow, actually, and today, playing a Cthulhu druid that runs Aviana, which is insane, by the way. He had some really cool, crazy plays where he had on turn 6, he played a Innervate, double Innervate, Aviana, Cthulhu with Bran already on the board, and Cthulhu was only an 8. So it did 16 damage, had a 5/5, a 2/4, and an 8/8 body. It was pretty nuts. And then the opponent just conceded after.
Seems good.
Seems good, man.
Yeah.
So what have you guys been up to this week? Like, Eve, why don't you start us off? What's been going on?
My sister, who her card background is pretty much Magic the Gathering, and that's it. Said, I saw your Facebook post, and I think it would be fun if we played together, and you kind of made this like a sister hangout sort of on the internet thing. So
Oh, sure.
I've been spectating her games, and it's a little hard with relatives, especially like sisters, where you don't really want to say, oh, don't do that, or no, don't do that. You don't want to get them like all defensive or anything, but it definitely made me start thinking about, okay, what are some basic things that you can teach beginners to just really help them up their game from like straight out of the gate? And I'm thinking probably a lot of people are going to be talking to their friends and trying to get them to play because of Morgul the Oracle. So
yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And Andrew, let's pass the ball to you. What's going on for you this week? Hearthstone or not? Whatever.
Well, so I finally got to rank 5, and man, that feels good. Like, now that I've kind of accepted the legend is just like barely out of my reach, like unless I have unending amounts of time, I get to rank 5 and it feels pretty good now. I got to full stars on rank 5 with the hunter deck we're going to talk about later, and then dropped all the way to no stars at rank 5 with the same hunter deck. It's not changing because I went up against 3 Zulok decks in a row, and that's a warrior prevalent meta right there. Oh, it's an awful matchup for it.
Okay.
And
yeah, you play hunter into warrior. You don't play it into zoo.
Yeah, so everyone's playing warrior except for me when I lose 3 times in a row. So I was tilting beyond belief. So I told you guys already, but I decided to go back to BRM and beat that on heroic, and wasn't too difficult, thankfully.
Get your awesome card back.
Got that awesome card back. I really want that Leo Explorer's card back though. That one is like dope.
It's very Egyptian
lightning
kind of
calls you.
feeling. Yeah.
But I'm really at this weird place where probably for the first time since we started this podcast, I'm not like feeling like I've got to go on and try to rank up. Like I would have gladly gone to rank 4. I probably would have kept going, but man, that 3 zoo in a row just like killed me. Especially because what my history tells me is that the minute I change decks, I'm going to go up against the worst deck for it. So I should just stick with what I have. But the problem is if I do that, I'll go up against another zoo. So I just was in this endless cycle where I was like, I can't do this anymore.
So
I'm going to
let's
step
go
back.
pay a visit to Nefarian.
And here's my ultimate cop-out, Rob. I got Overwatch. What? So now I really am not sure if I'm going to go back and rank up.
So
He's
is
never
this
coming back, folks.
I
He's
might
never
not.
coming back.
is this your second Blizzard game then?
Well, I mean, if you want to go all
he
the way
played
back,
WoW way
I played
back.
Warcraft, I played Warcraft 2, I played StarCraft, I played Diablo 2,
Okay, so not your second.
I played Warcraft 3. I think that's where it started slowing down. Then I played WoW, and yeah, Hearthstone has been the next one. So 9th, excuse me, but
Well,
that's
keeping
like
it all
how
in
many
the family,
Blizzard
right?
games.
Even
Yes.
if you're getting off Hearthstone for a while,
Yeah,
you're keeping
for
it in
sure.
the family.
There you
for
go.
sure. And I was like, what I've said before is I don't have much time to devote to Overwatch, but I was just at the point where, this weekend my wife's out of town, so I do have a little extra time. So whenever I have that little bit extra, I'll jump on for a little bit and go
There you go.
time
Have you tried
lapse.
out the new
Hero
I don't even
Honor?
know what the vocabulary is. No,
Are
I
you
haven't. I
PC
haven't
Master
clicked on it.
Race?
Of course I am. Come on.
That's
come
right.
now.
That's right.
I'm really waiting for when Overwatch comes to mobile. That's when I'll really play it more. But until then, I
I
will play
can
on
see
PC.
you in an airport with like a high-tech mouse and
I
like
can't
a
tell
really
where she
ridiculous
went.
iPhone
Where did
6
it go?
screen, and you're like, I got
If I can play Bioshock
It
on
was
my
going to
phone,
be one
then
of those
surely.
things where it's like augmented reality, and you're looking for the person in a
There you go. There you go.
Hang on, guys. I have to get this headshot.
Yeah. Anyway,
no,
what
you
about you,
don't
Rob?
want to be saying that inside a busy bus terminal these days.
That's true.
Oh dear.
You go, Rob. Your turn.
Or sideswiping cops while playing Overwatch, like the Pokemon Go
Ooh.
players in New York. Oh man.
You've had the most going on this week, Rob. So tell us where you're
Oh
at.
yeah. Okay. So, as most of the listeners have known, in the last couple weeks, I've kind of gotten the disenfranchisedness of Hearthstone meta. But the weirdest thing happened. Like this last week was actually the busiest week of like moving basically all of my possessions into 4 suitcases with my wife, and then buying a new laptop that is freaking awesome. We talked about it in the pre-show. If you guys want to know more about it, you should already know. If you want to know about it, it's everywhere. Like I've been posting everything about this freaking computer being insane. And then I've been transferring all of my data so that I can do this video, the podcast, everything, and also be able to leave my second computer behind because it weighs a ton. And there's no way I'm taking 2 laptops to China. It's insane. Or Japan. So
Or China, for that matter.
that being said, I am now, as you see, I am in the basement of my in-laws, who should be coming home right after the podcast is over because they're working late tonight. And my wife is out at a rehearsal dinner for her cousin, which convenently I don't have to go to, which I was really excited about because I can go to
bet
the
you
wedding
were.
tomorrow and bake in the sun.
Ugh.
So anyways, that being said, this is all the busy stuff that's been happening. Busy work, saying goodbyes to people is also not very fun, but I was able to actually play a deck that I hated on a lot in the past and really enjoy it and do some serious damage on the ladder. You want to know what it is?
What was it?
Patron Warrior.
Oh. Is it back?
And it is
No way.
so good. I don't know if it's so good at every rank, but I went on a tear with it. And it was a lot of fun. And again, like, you guys have to understand my filthy casualness right now, saying I went on a tear after like 5 games, going like 4-1 or something like that. And one of them was against a really good player that I knew personally, that we played for the 80 gold quest line. So it was insane. Let's just say around turn 5 or turn 4, something like that. I want to say it was turn 4. I hit my opponent for 16 damage with the Frothing Berserker and ended the game on turn 6. It was pretty nuts.
Ooh.
And then I hit it on the ladder, and I had like 6 patrons, and I still had a Frothing in my hand ready to go with like tons of Whirlwind effects and Battle Raging for 4. And I was like, this guy is toast.
Wow.
Pulling a full SI7 agent. It was awesome. And this list, I was fascinated because I was trying to find the Patron Warrior list on Ladder that has Commanding Shout and Wild Pyromancer, when I realized later that those 2 cards are actually signifying the Raging Worgen Math Warrior 1-turn kill deck. So I was like, oh, that deck, the one that used to do 32 damage in a turn, was super inconsistent, and then showed up at like this tournament lately. And apparently with Blood to Ichor and Raging Worgen now, it's actually really good because you're getting cards that are generating tempo and giving you the stuff that you're looking for.
It's kind of the only combo deck right now that's actually viable. I mean, combo decks used to be all over the place with Murloc
And
Pally
Miracle.
and Combo Druid. Yeah, Miracle also. But this OTK Warrior is like, oh, combo's a thing again. That's cool.
And I feel like it's still really balanced, even though people are giving it such a hard time. Like, especially for Kibler was making a Dragon Priest deck in order to counter it at the rank 5 to Legend meta. It ran a lot of taunts. It even teched in a Sun Fury Protector. So it was really interesting. It was pretty cool. And then Forbidden Shaping as well, like 1 Forbidden Shaping and 1 Sun Fury Protector for those 5/4s, just to put some more taunts out there. But yeah, that's what I've been doing this week. The deck that I've been playing, as well as I'll just transition this right into our discount deck of the week. So I'll play the bumper after I say this, but I got a chance to sit down with a listener, Jamie. Finally got a chance to sit down with him on Sunday and talk like card collection coaching, which, again, crazy stuff happened this week where I was super busy and yet played the most Hearthstone I've played in a couple months. So it's been pretty awesome. But Jamie ended up crafting Grommash this weekend and getting a really cool Math Warrior from our free-to-play episode, a free-to-play Warrior deck that he's been liking. And then we helped him build a Grim Patron deck without patrons, and subbing out the Frothing Berserkers for Fierce Monkeys, and then recommending that he go and use real money or use his first set of 700 gold on Blackrock Mountain to get those Grim Patrons. So he came out of that with a really cool thing. But we're going to transition into his other deck that he played and built, which was crafting that second high main or some mid-range hunter.
I hope you like my invention.
Someone call for the doctor?
All right, Andrew, take us away.
So I hadn't actually looked at this hybrid list, and these two are like extremely close. There is just a little bit of Tekken differently. So I was doing my thing. I don't know how much I talk about this, but one of my favorite things to do is just go through the entire list of Hearthstone streamers on Twitch and try and find people that no one's heard of. So I think that I've stumbled across this person no one's heard of, Pathra. I come to find out she's a player on Vicious Syndicate, so she's just fine and doing well and pretty well known and all that stuff. But I just happened to watch her as she's at rank 1, just about to hit into Legend, with this Hunter deck. And it's pretty much standard. We've talked a little bit of Hunter on the show, post Whispers of the Old Gods. I mean, and I've certainly done my fair share of hating on Call of the Skill, because I should. But as they say, if you can't beat them, join them. And Call of the Wild, is a extremely powerful card right now. It probably will always be an extremely powerful card unless it gets nerfed or there's some hard counter where Hemet Nesting Wary kills all beasts instead of one beast or something like that. That would be crazy if he did that.
Actually, yeah,
that would make him kind of
Wouldn't
viable
you like
all of a
to know?
sudden. Yeah. But really, the only weird things about her deck were that she added a couple abusive sergeants, a couple Argent Squires, and had one Stampeding Kodo, one Stranglethorn Tiger, had one King's Elec, and runs one tracking. Other than that, you got all the solid, things you expect from Hunter right now: Fiery Bats, Huge Toads, Quick Shots, Animal Companions, Kill Commands, Infested Wolves, Savannah Highmanes. There's nothing really like totally flashy about the deck, but it does really well. She said she was running into a lot of OTK Warrior and Dragon Warrior, and Hunter is a very good counter against Warriors. So if you're seeing a lot of that on the ladder right now, Mid-Range Hunter is a great way to go. Do you guys know why Hunter does so well against Warrior? Because I'm honestly not totally sure.
that's a good question.
See. I want to take a look at her list here. My guess is that those quick shots are able to release kind of the pressure that the Ravaging Ghoul can really pressure you with, and the Animal Companions sometimes can luck out, get you the Mishas. Call of the Wild will then get you a little bit more of a board threat late game, and
You've
Savannah
got your weapon in
Highmanes
there
as well.
too, right?
There's a couple
Yeah,
Eagle
you got
Horn
the double
bows,
weapons.
even
Yeah.
though there's no secrets in the deck.
Eagle Horn bows
So it's
really
kind of
help
interesting, but I mean, it's fine. Fiery War Axe is so powerful. This is just 1 mana higher.
Yeah.
As I played it, it was interesting because I always did well against Warriors, but I never felt like I was doing good, especially in the first few turns. Because you think about it, a Warrior can have a Fiery War Axe charge, kill your Infested Wolf, and then Ravaging Ghoul and clear your board, and it's like you got nothing. But for some reason, it always gets ahead somehow. The one thing I did not like in this list is the King's Elec. Literally, I probably played 10 games with this deck. Out of 5 or 6 times I played King's Elec, I got Abusive Sergeant or Argent Squire every single time. And that feels bad, man. But the times that you do get a Savannah Highmane or even an Infested Wolf off of it, it's pretty good. So you should try it out. It's not the most difficult deck to play. As I've been trying it out, it's similar to other decks where, I mean, turn 1, you want to play Fiery Bat or Argent Squire. Turn 2, you want to play Huge Toad. Turn 3, you want to play Animal Companion. Get your trades right, and the big win condition for this thing is I know we talk about knowing when to go face, but like you really, oh shoot.
I think we lost Andrew on our end. So, Eve, can you hear him at all?
Nope, he's frozen for me too.
Okay.
So this Hunter deck,
Well,
let me
we'll
just, because I
keep
can't
going on
see
the
it.
video, yeah.
It doesn't have any Doomsayers in it.
No, it does not. It has 2 Huge Toads, 1 King's Elec for 2 drops. And then for 3 drops, it's essentially Animal Companions, your Eaglethorn Bow, and then your Unleash the Hounds. And then it curves into 1 Houndmaster, 2 Infested Wolves, 1 Stampede Kodo, 1 Stranglethorn, 2 Highmanes, and then you have Call of the Wilds.
Because my first thought when he said, why is this winning against Warrior, is that a lot of other decks have their first couple cards out of the gate are kind of to gain tempo. And if they get immediately demolished by Fiery War Axe, then they start to lose tempo right away. But Hunter doesn't really start to gain tempo until mid-range. That's when it starts to really shine. So it's kind of okay with losing tempo to Warrior right away because it's got so many ways to get back in the game. Versus some of the other decks that it's like, if you get them right out of the gate, if you kill their Trog, if you kill their Worm or their Northshire Cleric or whatever they're dropping on turn 1, it kind of slows them right down. But Hunter doesn't really suffer that much if it loses like Fiery Bat to Fiery War Axe.
Yeah.
It almost feels like a zoo without being a zoo. You know, on turn 3, you're not probably going to be playing Huge Toad, Fiery Bat. You're more likely going to be playing the Animal Companion or.
Now, I will say that, Andrew, I played a variation of this deck. I didn't use Pathra's list. I kind of adapted 2 different other players that were playing mid-range Hunter, and I took inspiration from both of them. But my list had a little bit, and I'm not saying my list is superior. I'm pretty sure that whatever list that they're using here is probably better.
Obviously, she hit Legend. She
was probably doing this against like that specific archetype. So keep that in mind when you build this deck. Like, it is designed to beat a specific deck for sure. And if you wanted to make it more general, you can try that. I will say one main thing about this deck and why we're featuring is there's 0 legendaries in this, as well as the hybrid list. But I was finding that my Elix were doing much better because I ran 2 Elix and I didn't have any Argent Squires, and I believe I only had 1 Abusive Sergeant. And the ability to do that was because I had 2 Flame Jugglers and 1 Huge Toad and then 2 Elix. So it's kind of like how you jumble up your middle of the road or your beginning curve, making that a little bit less consistent, more consistent on 2 rather than 1. And then in the mid game, I actually had 2 Houndmasters and 2 Deadly Shots instead of. So it's kind of like cut 1 Abusive, cut 2 Argent Squires, and you cut 1 Huge Toad of this list here. And then you're going to put in a second Deadly Shot, a second Elic, and then I think a second Houndmaster. So I'm like basically bolstering up the later game and the mid game and going there, and then 2 Flame Jugglers. So it's a little different, but you can kind of do the same thing.
You really have to.
Mine's a little broader.
You really have to think about like, what do you want? Because I even shook it up a little bit from her list. I mean, Deadly Shot is such a powerful card, especially when you're going up against a lot of Shaman or Druid. When they play Ancient of War for 7 and they think they got you because they innervated it on turn 5, and you just have a Deadly Shot answer, like that's insanity. That's why you win those games.
Especially if you're running up against a lot of Shamans and Druids, you're going to want that second Deadly Shot so good. Like, double Deadly Shot is one of my favorite things.
It like something
exactly. It's very matchup dependent.
That Rob was saying, she's teched up against a certain matchup. If she's at Legend, then the people she's playing against are in her MMR rating. So depending on where you are on the ladder, you're playing on against completely different people and completely different archetypes than she is.
And I will go back and try to play. I mean, it's nice that I won't lose that rank 5 chest, so I will feel bad about going to rank 6, but not completely defeated. But I'll change it a little bit. It's really interesting. This is probably the first list, especially with just these 2 right next to each other, where you've got a lot of choices you can make about what you want to play, and why you want to play it is really simple. You say I'm running into a lot of Zoo or a lot of Shaman. Well, some Flame Jugglers might actually help you out, because doing some damage pretty quickly on the board can actually get you an edge up. You know, you're going up against the Warriors.
Yeah, those Flame Jugglers are crazy.
Yeah, I like Flame Juggler. I think it's really strong.
You're going up against those Warriors. You probably don't need to change much from Pathra's list, because you just need to gain some tempo from the very get-go and just keep building from there. And Call of the Skill is always going to be Call of the Skill, so draw it on turn 8 and then draw your second on turn 9 and you'll win, and it's okay.
Yeah, I got to the point where I dusted my Princess Huhuran, which I made within like the first week of the expansion of cards coming out, because I thought this is going to be a thing and Hunter's so good right now. And then that's one of the legendaries that didn't really pan out.
It's so much. Still possible that she could be a thing in this next adventure coming.
With the adventure coming up, she could be amazing. But I can't remember what I switched her for, but I needed a different legendary I didn't have.
Eve, she could have her heyday in a tavern brawl. And I'm gonna smoke you in that tavern brawl because I've got her.
You know what? If that happens, I will give it up and I'll be like, "You were right, Andrew. I should have kept Princess Huhuran."
And then she'll say, "P.S. Druid still sucks."
But for right now, I can't remember who I switched her for, but I needed another legendary that I didn't own, and was like, you know what? She hasn't done anything for me lately. She's not in any decks. She's not safe play. True. I haven't put her in anything.
It was Grommash. She made the right decision.
I've had him for a while. He was one of the first legendaries I got, but
gotcha.
Yeah, I'll try and think, but I can't remember. But yeah, I
cool.
said goodbye to Princess Huhuran.
But Andrew, for serious, like if you want, I don't have my list screenshotted anymore. I think it's somewhere in the deck swapping on our Discord server. So if you're interested in that list as well as the hybrid list, I think I posted both of them there.
And the hybrid's on our
definitely
Twitter
try
also.
that if you're. Yeah, I just posted the one on our Twitter right before we started recording as a print preview, I guess, of the show. But yeah, definitely consider Flame Jugglers for Argent Squires at a bare minimum if you're going to see a lot of Zoo. And then consider a second Houndmaster. That's the other thing that I would say that really helped a lot, because I was destroying Zoo with this deck. Not Pathra's deck, the one that I had, which had 2 Flame Jugglers, two Deadly Shots, and 2 Houndmasters. So basically those 3 elements.
I think I'll play one more game just to see, but I've got a feeling, especially since we're within 10 days of the end of the season, people are going to be playing a lot of fast decks. So, expect Zoo is always going to be really heavy at the beginning of the season and at the end of the season. So whatever you can do to counter it, I'll go ahead and try that hybrid list and see how it goes.
There's just a couple cards that don't work well with Flame Juggler, that you don't want that juggle to hit, like Acolyte of Pain, like our Armor Smith, and then in Zoo, the one that pumps out imps as it takes damage, and Gang Boss.
Gang Boss.
Yeah, but it's good for taking off of bubbles. Yeah, and getting that, like, the 4 health minion down to 3 health so you can take it out with your weapon if you get a lucky bounce. So yeah, I like Flame Juggler.
The hybrid list, guys, if you're interested in why it's different, is the key cards are you're not running an Elec, you're running a Direwolf instead. You're also running 1 short abusive, and you're trading that abusive as well as a Stampeding Coda. You're trading both of those in for 2 Argent Horse Riders, so that you're basically able to take the game and transition it into a race sooner. That's what hybrid is comparatively to a mid-range version of Hunter. Mid-range version of Hunter is board control center, similar to Zoo. Early game strong, mid game strong, and then you use Call the Wild for your win conditions with Savannah, high mains. The hybrid list basically says, I'm going to race you by turn 4. That's when I switch gears and I'd stop trading, unless it's Zoo, and then you will always trade something, but you won't trade all of the minions anymore.
So
that's
a bit
kind of
more
basically
aggressive.
the 2 differences. Yes. And I'm not saying that the hybrid list is the one that Andrew should use for Zoo, although it probably does have a better matchup than Pathra's list, just going hybrid because you can transition and they have to life tap. But the other one is if you want to still play mid-range, you can still add the double, Flame Jugglers. This one only runs 1 Flame Juggler, 1 Direwolf. And so again, just mess around with the lists. They're very, very flexible if your card collection is weak. The only necessary cards that are rare epics are basically double high main, double Call of the Wild. That's like the worst of the worst that you're going to have to spend your dust on potentially. Right, Andrew?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I like the fact
and
that
then
it's
maybe
so
Eagle
flexible.
Thorn Bows.
It's almost like, what works with you? What cards do you like? What do you want to put in here? There's such a kind of range of different ones that will work together. So that's really cool.
There's a pretty hard and fast backbone, and with most meta decks, that's the case where you're not going to run aggro shaman without tunnel trogs, and but the flame jugglers you could sub for Argent Horse Rider. I don't know. I'm just speaking out of my mouth. So
yeah.
All right, let's transition into the deck basics section. We're actually skipping the news because there really isn't that much.
Yeah, I think we went over a lot of it last week. Basically, we're not even going to cover the Tavern
Brawl because it's and then the Tavern Brawl is basically a copy.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, we're still waiting. There's been a lot of it's coming soon. Be prepared.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, the one thing we didn't cover last week on our speculation about Karazhan is we got Basically, there's a little message that went out and some stuff that went out at a fireside that people are saying the 28th, there is a Chinese expo similar to PAX East or PAX Prime, but it's just in China. And they're going to release some information 11 p.m. Pacific time. Is that right, Andrew?
I think so, yeah. Because it's, it's
so on the
1 o'clock
Hearthstone
for me.
channel. Yeah, it's really late. It's 11 p.m. Pacific time on the 28th of July. So I'll be able to catch it right before I head out to the hotel
PDT.
for leaving for Japan.
What's PDT?
That's Pacific Daylight Time.
Okay, yeah. Thursday, July 28th.
So that's the news. It's really short. There's nothing more to add other than pretty much we still think it's Karazhan.
Well,
right,
and
guys?
No,
I will say
I'm not full on board with that, but yeah.
Oh, okay. I will say
I
that
think that
our
it's gonna be original.
recommendation. Okay, our recommendation is always about like doing adventures and putting your gold towards that. And as I was working on an email we'll talk about later, I realized recommendation always has to change as especially when we know an announcement's coming. Like if you're siphoning off your gold for certain things, hold off until we know what this new one is, so that when it comes out, we can find out, okay, this looks like this is going to be really, meta defining, or man, this is a load of crap. Never mind. Go get your Blackwing Corruptor. You can't ever know, but that's why we do a show every week, because speculation's fun, and hopefully it gets us close, and then we can laugh about it when we were totally wrong, or brag when we were totally right.
Yep.
Well, we can say based on past history, the adventures have been pretty good, because it's like they're distilled down to way less
Pretty good
cards.
Crip impersonation.
So each card has been more impactful than like a big, huge expansion where there's a bunch of cards that never see play.
Yeah.
It's more likely that more of the cards in the, I wanted to say League of Explorers, in the adventure are going to be impactful. So as far as I know, this hasn't changed. You can't craft them. You're not going to be able to craft them until they are moved out into wild. So it's not like you have to save up dust for these like you would if there was an expansion.
I think so.
Right? So you just want to save up gold in order to buy the wings with gold in case you aren't shelling out the money for it.
I mean, we've definitely said, and it's still true, that the best bang for your buck is gold into adventures. So
Yep.
I don't think it's even worth considering. Well, should I dust?
It's
And
not
say, no,
even a
just save up your
decision.
money and get the wings. It's worth it.
Because
Way better
they're
than
guaranteed
getting packs.
legendaries, right? You get legendaries from them. You don't have to
It's
try
like
and
a
open them out
pack
of
that
packs.
you know what's in
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
And so the knowledge of knowing what's in it and the power level that's coming is already at a higher tier than just opening something at random that could be good is worth that 700 gold for basically, what is it, like 3 packs a wing or something, just shy of 3 packs a wing.
And then you got
And one of
the
them's a legendary.
challenges, right? Like the class challenges, which each give you a class card.
Yeah, so it's 1 or 2 class challenges. That's 2 cards. Every boss is another 2 cards. So 2, 4, 6, 8, potentially 10. And then maybe even if there's a 4th boss, that's 12. And then you have a legendary, which could be 13. So it's like,
And if
for
you care
700
about
gold, that's a
things,
pretty
you get a
good
new
deal.
card back, and they're just fun. All of them are just fun to play through.
Yep. Okay, so let's go into our non-news related section called the most case scenario tips for beginners, right? So everything in Hearthstone, as Andrew or Eve, I don't know who wrote it, everything in basically needs to be analyzed through the lens of what is on the board, what is in your hand, what is in your deck, what your opponent has in their deck, and what you can reasonably expect coming from his deck and hand. So different situations will then necessitate other ways of thinkable plays or unthinkable plays.
So as we talk through these tips, and if you're a newer player and these are going to be helpful to you, great. If you already know most of this stuff, hopefully this is helpful for you to be able to help some of your friends or help other people to get better at the game. Just remember that any tips are always going to, be in tune with variance. There's not, I I want to be careful, but I don't think there's any hard and fast 100% of the time rule. I mean, you go back to my Shadow Strike the Hog story. That was important, you know?
Right.
And when we talk about value, that's never a good play, but that won me the game. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, go back a couple episodes and find it. It'll be a fun Easter egg. But
basically, when I was thinking of these tips, it was for people that just picked up the game, don't know anything about Hearthstone, don't have very many background information about, or very much background information in any kind of online card games or digital card games. So they're just coming in with no knowledge whatsoever about value, about how to play the game at all. And when you play Mage, they encourage you to play your spells to do damage to face. So they're kind of giving you misinformation right out of the
teaching you
gate.
about mana. They're teaching you bad habits for card advantage. Well,
I think the way it goes is that they're telling you to play minions. So on turn 1, you want to play a turn 1 minion, which, that's true. But the problem is that then you cross that over and, I've got a hand with arcane missiles, frostbolt, and an arcane intellect. Obviously, I'm going to play missiles on 1, frostbolt on 2, arcane intellect on 3. Only one of those is a correct play. I'll leave it to you to figure it out.
Yeah, and when you're sitting there and your card is glowing green because you can play it, and your other option is to pass and do nothing, it's not really something that a beginner would do. It's just go, I gotta hold on to this and wait and see what to do with it.
Yeah, why would I do nothing?
Yeah. So
it's not fun or interactive.
Exactly. Don't play Mage. Just joking. But a lot of people that I've talked to that have started playing the game, because they give you Jaina right away, they get really comfortable with Mage and they want to play her a lot because that's the thing they're most used to, and it's a little hard for them to jump out of their comfort zone and try a different class that they don't know anything about. So they actually tend to stay with Mage a lot and stay with her a long time, and that whole thing with spells is really important. Save them for minions. Do not go face unless you have lethal. But yeah, like Rob and Andrew were saying, there's exceptions to every rule. You have to take into account all of the different, what they're playing, what you're playing, what your class is. Yeah, all the different scenarios, and take that into account.
We were just talking about the turn of the game where you have to start going face. Like, if you're at that point, then double. I remember playing against a tempo mage this past week that like double fireballed me on like turn 7 with the coin, and I was dead the next turn because of that. So, if you're at the turning point, then those spells are good. But when you're setting up the game, when you're trying to establish board control, you don't want to waste arcane missiles on turn 1 when on turn 4, when you can play it with Flame Waker, you're gonna get way more value out of that minion and out of that spell.
Right.
Yeah. And one of the things to remember is that minions do damage every turn. So it's way more valuable to keep your minions alive by taking out your opponent's minions than to just throw a spell at their face and attack their face and ignore the minions on their board, who can then take out your minions.
I mean, this is basic math that you can actually use as a parent and teaching a child Hearthstone, like math. You can say, look, if you're trying to teach them, for example, you're trying to teach them multiplication, right? You have a minion on the board that has 3 attack and 2 health, like a King's Elic, for example. And you have a quick shot and like an Eaglethorn bow. You can say, well, I'm using your health and you're taking damage to kill a minion. Sure, you're not hitting them in the face and getting their health down to win the game. But essentially what you're doing is you're taking 3 damage, and then you're allowing your Elic to have the potential of doing 6 or 9 or 12, because it can do that 3 damage that is presented on the board over the course of however many turns. Mm-hmm. So if you take the total attack damage of the characters, or the minions, sorry, and then you multiply that by how many turns that they can actually deal their damage, whether it be a minion or not for the trade, you're then effectively doing 2 for 1 card or 3 for 1 card, and that is what you are then getting value out of. You're generating value exponentially out of your cards instead. That's why spells are much more effective using them against minions most of the time in the general scenario, right, Andrew?
Yeah, and to flip that on its end, that's the exact reason why you don't mind if your opponent has an armor smith on the board as far as like killing you. You're more afraid of that minion because of the armor that they can get. But if your opponent has a minion that only has one attack, there's not a lot that they can do with it, you know? You want to know the variants, so obviously Zoo can power overwhelming the crap out of you. So that's never good. But especially when you're first starting out and people might be playing some lower minions like Goldshire Footmen or, you know, something like that, it's not a huge threat on the board. So you don't have to worry about it as much. If you can't take it out in a turn, that's okay. It might be a better play to actually develop your own board and just play a minion rather than worry about destroying their minion that isn't in 5 turns. It's going to do 5 damage. That's okay. You've got a lot more.
And even living minions on the board that can attack aren't necessarily required to attack.
Right.
Like, the decision of non-decision is still a decision, right? Like, if you have a card that is on the board that can do something, you have the decision to choose whether it's going to do something or whether it's not going to do something. That is a decision.
That's a lot of big words, Rob. I don't know.
I just went.
That's true. That's true.
Basically, you know what they have access to, like Abusive Sergeant.
Exactly.
So that one attack minion next turn could be doing 3 damage.
Good.
Right.
So you can keep that in your mind. But yeah, there are cards in the game that do exactly what they do, and you can kind of look at them and go, that's going to be able to do 4 damage or 3 damage or whatever, and that's what it does. But then you got cards like Tunnel Trog, Darkshire Councilman, Flame Waker, Knife Juggler, that depending on what your opponent plays, can exponentially do way more damage, that can build up over time, that are a threat, and you do not want to let them build, you do not want to let them get any bigger, so that they're even harder to take care of next turn, or the turn after that, or the turn after that. So those are ones that, yes, you do want to take those out if you have the means to do so.
And I'll throw out Flesh-Eating Ghoul on there in Arena, because I learned about that card being a problem from playing Arena so often and getting wrecked by Flesh-Eating Ghoul. So even training yourself to pay attention to what you're losing against a lot, if you are losing a lot to Knife Juggler because they play it and then play a lot of minions, that's a really effective strategy. So maybe I should, be ready for that next time. I can take out that Knife Juggler. That maybe the first time I came up against it, didn't think it would be that big of a deal, but learned through experience that it is. Experience is always going to be your friend as long as you're intentional about learning. This is a life lesson, folks. Sink it in your brain and your heart.
You know what? That's a really good thing to say, though. This is not a paladin
secret that's going to screw you.
That's right.
That's a really good thing to say, though, is that sometimes people just go, oh, I lost that game and that felt bad, and they go on to the next thing. But if you're paying attention to what steps led to your defeat, then you're always going to get better. If you're always going to notice, they played that card and it ran out of control, and if I'd have taken it out the first time it might even put you back a bit because you spent something on it that was really expensive to get rid of it, and it may have felt bad to spend a fireball on a Knife Juggler.
4 attack minion or 4
and
or
it
4
doesn't
minion.
feel great, but you're going, okay, over time this thing is going to be able to do so much damage and build so much up, and they've got it behind a taunt, so I need to do this now.
It's like threat management, right, Eve?
Yeah. Just realize which cards in the game are you need to get on this right away. Get rid of that before it spirals out of control.
And it's kind of a hard thing to say, but as a new player, you're going to be exposed to so many new situations. And so it's important to take note of swingy losses, swingy turns, swingy cards. That way you can realize, wow, that guy did something that was really cool with his Knife Juggler or his Flesh-Eating Ghoul, like Andrew was saying. And so when you see that card, now you're able to present your brain with muscle memory to say, now I need to react to this card every time it's presented to me. And sadly, the only way you realize this is through experiential knowledge. But the nicest and the best thing about Hearthstone is that you gain experiential knowledge from watching pros play, not just playing the game yourself. Because Hearthstone is one of the most accessible esports that you can learn from by watching others. Like 90% of the things that you're going to be watching is going to be what you're encountering yourself and able to pull off. It's not a mechanically oriented game like Overwatch, for example, where you have to practice shooting and aiming and not missing and leading your shots if they are projectiles versus
action,
like instant thing. So let's move on. We can milk this one thing about cards and threats and stuff to the end of eternity, but we have some other things called card draw, which I'll pass this over to Andrew real quick. Just using your card draw abilities.
It's really simple. Just if you are going to draw at some point as you're planning out your turn, almost always. Again, I'm going to say the almost always a lot because I'm so careful. But most of the time, you're going to want to draw as soon as possible so that when you draw that card, it might be something that you actually want to play rather than what you thought before. So whether you're life tapping as Warlock or you have some kind of other draw mechanic, try and put the draw as early in the turn as you can, unless you have a really good reason or it's impossible to do so any other way.
Yeah, like if you have that Acolyte of Pain out and you can bash it against your opponent's, one attack thing, you do that first and get that card first and see what it is. So you have all your information before you start using up your mana. And then you might not have any mana left for this new card that you just drew, which is so awesome and would have changed that turn completely. Yeah. So, any card draw you can do that at the beginning.
There's lots of outliers with this. For example, like using a card to draw a card while a wild pyromancer is on the board. You have to realize the impacts of playing a card that will damage the entire board with wild pyromancer. It actually damages the whole board with 1 extra damage for you to play a spell. So be very careful and conscious of the impacts of what you're doing. Is it exactly the same way that you would play a Doom Guard? You would want to make sure your hand is relatively empty, basically 1 or 0 cards when you play the Doom Guard, unless you're getting enough card advantage from playing him on the board, or you have lethal, that you would want to draw after playing a card that discards cards. So usually the rule formula is you discard first and you draw next, unless you have a lot of cards in your hand and you want to do risk management by adding another card to your hand with potentially low value in order to play a Doom Guard that you can discard another low value card because you have another high value card in your hand. Essentially, that situation that presents itself would be having a Soulfire in your hand and a Doom Guard, or a second Doom Guard in your hand. You don't want to discard 2 of those in your hand. You would like to keep 2 of the cards. So you get more cards to increase the odds of rolling the die that you're going to keep the 2 cards that you like in your hand.
Yeah.
Okay. So those are just the outliers. In general, it's like if I have 4 mana and I have a 2 mana minion and my life tap ability lets me take 2 damage as a Warlock and draw a card, and then I have a 4 mana cost minion. Those are my options. My options are I can draw and play a 2 mana minion, or I can play a 4 mana minion. So you either play the 4 right away, or you play the draw to see if you get a different 2 mana or 1 mana card that you can play in place of your 2 mana. Does that? I know this is
that makes
purely
sense.
like describing this in context. If you're multitasking right now, you might want to like rewind the episode 30 seconds, like put down your pen and your paper. Be like, okay, so what did he just say? Because like, I know if you're multitasking, that's going to go right over your head. So just be conscious of that. Okay?
But honestly, I've seen so many Warlocks that I've played against on ladder that tap last. Like they have 2 mana left after they're done playing all of their cards, and they go, oh, so I'll just tap to see what I get. No. I mean, you need to tap first.
If you want to cause Rob the most anger possible, is playing Warlock really badly, drawing last and beating me makes me the most angry thing in Hearthstone. It is the most aggravating thing for me because I have played a lot of Zoo and I've played Secret Paladin against a lot of Zoo. And so when I was grinding to Legend, there was over freaking 20 games that I played against bad Warlocks and lost, and I wanted to flip my laptop.
Because you can't even say to yourself, oh, they were an awesome player and they defeated me. It's like they made so many mistakes and they still
You suck.
Don't be a bad Warlock. Be a
Tap
good
first.
warlock.
Draw first. Draw
A
first.
good
yeah.
warlock. Okay, that's a little bit of a stretch. All warlocks are bad.
I would, and the other thing that you want to be conscious of, besides the drawing mechanics, guys, is there are very small, now that Shredder is gone, positioning tricks that you need to be aware of.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you guys want to pass this off or if you want me to take this, but I can kind of introduce it. Basically, there are cards in the game that deal with adjacent minions or minions next to it when it's played. An example would be Direwolf Alpha, Defender of Argus. So Direwolf Alpha, when played, any minions that are on its right and left will actually get a 1 attack bonus when it's in play. Not a battle cry, not any extra stuff. But then there are battle cry dependent minions like Defender of Argus or Sun Fury Protector that will give taunt to the minions next to it. And it's sometimes even appropriate to negate the full value of a buff of giving it 1 attack, 1 health on Defender of Argus plus the taunt in order to give 1 minion a buff instead of 2, just for the example of preserving a specific minion that is really low, that doesn't want to trade, like a Knife Juggler, for example. You want to buff up something else so that doesn't become a minion target. Mm-hmm. And then you also want to make sure that you're buffing up the right minions. So positioning then would then come again with playing Warlock. This is why Andrew and I are always harping on new players to get Warlock cards, start playing Zoo as soon as you can, because even though you are, quote unquote, the bad Warlock that draws last and has bad positioning, those are the two things that you learn the most from playing Zoo.
Yes.
Yeah. Where to put those cards, how to get the most value out of them. Yeah,
especially with Imp Gang Boss added to the game and Darkshire Councilman with the Forbidden Ritual card. I almost said Shaping, Forbidden Ritual. Because when you summon minions, they will always summon on the right of whatever the card is. So if there are no minions and you play Forbidden Shaping, it just fills however many board, wherever. But if you have minions already on the board, it will fill them to the right. So you want to position a minion that will buff them to the left or in the middle of the minions. Or the Imp Gang Boss, you want to position the Imp Gang Boss to the left so that the minions spawn on the right. Okay? So that is just basics in positioning. What's our next thing here? We have
we kind of got to move through these.
The Innkeeper.
Yeah. If you are up against minions that give your opponent card draw, be very careful with them. Things like Norshar Cleric or Acolyte of Pain. As much as you can, you want to take them out in one hit. Like Acolyte of Pain, you don't want to be pinging with your Mage Hero power and giving them a bunch of cards. Norshire Cleric, if they have it down and you have a 1 attack minion and you drop it and their next turn they're going to be able to bump it into that, heal themselves, get card draw, you may want to just keep that 1 attack minion in your hand so as not to easily give them card draw. Because card draw is very powerful in Hearthstone. If you have more cards than your opponent, you have more options, you have more answers. There's a very high percentage chance that you will win if you have more cards than your opponent.
Yeah.
So, Andrew, why don't you take a moment to basically tell the listeners what you've just said is called card advantage and what exactly is card advantage?
I mean, it's really just what you said. The fact that, having more cards is typically going to help you in the game. As the game goes on, you're probably going to be playing 2 or 3 cards a turn. And so you're quickly going to run out of cards unless you have some kind of card draw mechanic in play. So having some kind of card draw in your deck is basically always, unless you're Warlock, a really good idea. You want to have some way of catching up. There's actually something interesting about that Pathra deck is that it doesn't have any card draw as far as quick shot, I guess, if you have an empty hand, but that's it.
Yeah,
so some decks can make it work, and especially if you have an aggro deck, you're probably...
An Elec.
I don't know. Oh, yeah, the Elec also. You get to draw an Abusive Sergeant, guaranteed, and not get anything.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's not a guaranteed card draw. And I can't even think of the last time I got a card off of Quick. Yeah, I never do.
I got
you're
it a
always
couple
using
times
it to
while I was
remove
running
minions,
this.
I got one
right?
yesterday.
So, yeah,
I don't know.
It doesn't work for me.
Yeah, but the card advantage that you can show is basically you have cards in your hand and on the field. And the total amount of cards that you have on the field is worth about 1.5, right? Because the cards in the field have an impact, and the cards in your hand hold a little bit of a different mysterious card advantage of 1 instead of 1.5. So if you kind of like add up all the cards in the field and then you add up all the cards in the hand, that's kind of like what the card advantage looks like. Now, obviously, there are game flipping type mechanics where you clear the entire board with 1 card, and your value of your card advantage becomes much greater because you've eliminated their card advantage. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So those are just some other factors with card advantage.
We kind of got to move through
Talked
these.
about
We're
removal.
going pretty late here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think
we went through removal. We went through specific decks. You want to just cover the mulligan and kind of close that out with the mulligan?
Yeah. Basically, mulligan for low cost starting cards. Like, even if you've got a really awesome looking legendary in your hand, generally you don't want to hold on to that. You want to be able to pull that later in game. You want things. For me, I try and go.
Back up, Eve. What's the mulligan in general? Like, mulligan is a freaking golf term, for crying out loud.
When you
Right.
when you start the game and the cards come up and you have option to either hold on to them or trade them back for possibly getting better cards. So anything
that's the mulligan.
that's higher than 3 mana cost, send it back. You don't want it in your opening hand because you're going to have to wait 4 turns unless you're a druid to play it. So it's no good to you.
Asterisk in general.
In general. Yeah, you want the option of possibly getting 1 mana cost cards, 2 mana cost cards, so that you can start playing the game right away. Also good are removal cards, so that you can immediately start removing whatever they're putting down. Really famous examples of this are Fiery War Axe, Frostbolt for mages, things that can get rid of whatever they put down on their first turn and second turn are good to hold on to as well.
Yep, absolutely. Andrew, is there any other things you want to have here before we kind of wrap this up and move on?
The one thing I was thinking about is if another thing that new players kind of, I know I struggled with, was your opponent plays let's say a fiery bat on turn 1 and you're playing as mage. Do you coin to hero power to kill their fiery bat?
How much health, or no, how much attack does a fiery bat have? Is it just 2?
2. Mm-hmm.
2.
If you could put down a minion that would survive a trade with fiery bat, would you do it? Would you put down
Honestly,
a worm?
I would actually say that it is completely dependent on what is in your hand, what cards do you have on turn 1, and then also what type of mage you're playing. So again, if you're playing a freeze mage, it is a really bad idea to do that. But freeze mage is a really complicated deck. So in general, if you're playing like a tempo or an even basic card type mage, it's actually kind of a bad idea to do that. It's better to get out a mana worm, or if you have mana worm and arcane missiles, you can have a very big swing turn on turn 1. You can play the mana worm, which is a 1/3 minion. You get a coin, which pumps it up to a 2/3 minion, and then you play the arcane missiles, which has basically a 66% chance? Yeah, something like that. 67% chance that one of those missiles will kill the fiery bat for you.
Sure.
And then makes your minion a 3/3.
Which is pretty good. I think that it's just a mindset for new players that I have to clear my opponent's board every turn. You have to weigh establishing your board with clearing theirs. And I think it's something that you just kind of learn as you play. It's not always something that can be even described very well. So the more experience that you get, and you try different stuff, you think 4 plays down the road, how much did that affect the game? Did I lose tempo off of that play, or would that fiery bat have just completely wrecked me if he was able to Houndmaster for some reason the next turn, and I needed to get that beast out so that he couldn't deal with that. I think that's
experiential knowledge that we talked through. Yeah,
life
lessons.
One's really hard. That one's really hard to call.
Yeah, it's such a hard thing too, and the reasoning that it's so hard is the same reasoning that it's really hard for us to evaluate cards without being in it and playing the cards. And even while we're playing the cards, we can't experientially figure out what's good until the meta kind of settles down.
Yeah.
Like when we see a bunch of new cards, we're like, oh, this card is busted, or Infested Wolf is freaking slow. And then you get into the meta, and a month and a half later, Infested Wolf is literally in every hunter deck.
Yeah.
And you're just like, there's no way for us to know that.
And Ravaging
Or
Ghoul is
there is
amazing.
no way to know to that. Yeah. There are cards that you will see that are just like, this card is freaking broken. And there are other cards that are much easier to evaluate in a different venue, aka Arena and Bog Creeper. Like, the value that you get of cards can sometimes just be overwhelming. So let's wrap up and go into our thank you section of the show. And I'm pulling open and closing all the wrong windows. Here we go.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Too many thank yous.
Yeah,
All right, Eve.
Patreon supporters, but also we just want to say thanks to Rune for his email. Yeah, you got on that.
Andrew, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I'll tell you guys. Rune was very detailed with his goals, very detailed with what he's done. He said he was a new listener to the show, but really enjoyed it. And he normally finishes around rank 19 or 14, but really wanted to make it to 10. Told us how much he's in, how much dust he has, gold he has. He said his legendaries, I'll tell you this, were Sylvanas, Archmage Antonidas, Grommash, Twin Emperor Veclor, and Deathwing. And I'm assuming he had Cthulhu also. And he wanted to try and find a deck that would work for him. And I did some research and took a little bit of time and crafted something for him. I'll tell you guys, we are very, very open to helping anybody with this kind of thing. A couple things were really helpful. One was that he told us about his goals, what he likes to play, what he doesn't like to play, that kind of thing. He had actually uploaded all of his collection to Hearthpwn. They have a tool called Innkeeper. It's free, and it'll automatically sync with your collection and make it so that anybody, if you have a Hearthstone account, can log in and look through. So I was able to just go through, and as I was trying to craft a deck for him, see exactly what he had and make something that he definitely could create. So as I was looking through it, Sylvanas, great that you have that. Archmage is a great mage card. Grommash is a great warrior card. What is that class called again? And Twin Emperor Veclor makes Cthulhu definitely possible, and Deathwing is not as bad as we thought. So my first thought with Deathwing and Grommash was maybe there's a tempo dragon that we can play around with here. So I was able to make one for him. It wasn't completely what you'd see from other places because he's got a limited collection. So
Sure.
I'll run through a little bit of kind of the substitutions just so they're helpful. Like he didn't have 2 Alexstrasza's Champion, which that's a great card for Dragon Warrior. But as I was thinking through it, Blackwing Technicians are pretty good, and though you can't heal them like a Dragon Priest can, it's a tempo play that you get a better card on turn 3 than they will. We also put like a Fierce Monkey in instead of Second Blood to Ichor, and a few other things. But I hope it's helpful to you, man. Let us know how the...
Did the same thing on my end.
Oh, yeah?
With Jamie on Sunday.
Yeah, we that's right,
Innkeeper. We hopped in Discord. We just hung out for a couple hours. Like, oh, you have the beasts. What's that doing there? Let's dust that sucker.
So, yeah, we love being able to help you guys out on an individual basis. We hope the show is helpful in general and fun to listen to. But if you want some coaching... for your exact collection, hit us up and let us know. We're happy to bring whatever value we can to you.
Yeah, shoot us an email over at velenschosenpodcast@gmail.com. And also, you can support us like the lovely people that Eve is about to read on patreon.com/velenschosen. You can give us monthly tips that help us at the show. I know it'll help a lot as we move forward in continuing to make forth our best effort, not only out of pocket, but through your help on Patreon to make the show even better and upgrade our equipment slowly and efficiently.
Yeah, thank you so much to Stephen B, Jamie Lynn P, Brexton SI7, Jamie S, Kelvin, Crovan B, Ricardo C, John H, Gabriel Z, Garrett S, and Jeffrey W, our Patreon supporters. We really appreciate everything you give to us.
Eve, pick a random one.
You guys rock.
Pick a random one?
Pick a random one.
Brexton SI7.
All right. Brexton, the thing that I like about you is that you're Crexton. We like to eat the Chexton every time that we come to Mexton. That's a hard one to rhyme with.
If I'd have known what you were going for.
You chose the hardest one. No doubt. Well,
wow.
Brexton, maybe
Please
I'll
send
work
your
on that a
complaint
little bit
emails
better.
to Velen's Chosen podcast.
To Andrew at idon'tgivearit.com. No, I'm just playing.
All right.
Another way you can support the
we
show.
have one iTunes review.
Besides bad rapping is giving us a 5-star review on iTunes. We got one from Nutcase.
Andrew literally gave us a bad rap.
I did. Like,
that's the best dad joke of the day you're gonna hear.
It is.
Great podcast, especially for budget players. I listen to a bunch of Hearthstone podcasts, and Valen's Chosen provides a great point of view for the low budget or free to play players. Even though I'm not low budget, I still enjoy listening to their opinions on decks, news, and the meta. Thank you very much, Nutcase.
Thanks, man. I was actually talking with Nutcase on in Hearthstone. I was watching one of his games. He had a very rough run today with that Crusher Shaman list. So it's okay.
Oh,
it's okay, Nutcase.
I'm
It's
sorry
gonna
for
get
steering
better.
you clear.
It's gonna get better, bud. You can. We just need to take some time.
My penance for steering you towards that Crusher Shaman is that Frodan recently jumped in to Seed Story Cup and has one version that runs double Bog Creeper and swept with this deck. I was like,
yeah, he did.
What? This is so sick.
Nuts. But it doesn't
Another way
mean
you
it's
can
the
support
most
the show
efficient
is
on the
waiting
ladder.
for that later.
To buy a shirt.
Yep.
That's another way you can
And then
support
we
the show.
have a new Stitcher review that I was informed of in the pre-show that I'll add to the show notes on Google Drive, but it is from Saint Vicious, and he says, the Mecca for all your Hearthstone needs. Been a long time listener of this podcast, and what I can tell you, it is 100% worth a listen.
Aww.
The hosts have a great chemistry and are extremely friendly both in-game and on the air. I've never seen a group of hosts more willing to help their listeners than these guys. For new or budget players, being able to get solid advice from highly skilled players like Eve and Rob, as well as future BlizzCon 2017 World Championship Andrew, is priceless. Seriously, why are you guys still reading this review? Go listen to the podcast.
I like
Saint.
it. I like
Thank you,
it.
Saint Vicious. That was great.
And I hope that,
Firebat in the making.
It's funny. I was listening to all these, some of our friends on Coin Concede and Hearth Coach, some of these other things, and I was thinking a lot more about tournaments. And I was like, you know what? If I could get Legend one time, I might feel like I'm competent to, But maybe I'll find some sleeper tournament or something and have some fun. I would love to try my hand at some competitive play and see how it went.
I honestly think it would be good just to try it. Because no matter how you feel about the ladder, the tournament is completely different. Like the way you play in tournaments.
I've told you guys that
like ladder
LAN that
play.
I was playing in, that I was playing in the LAN tournaments and just sweeping people.
Yeah.
Like it was great. It's like you really do only need a certain threshold and a certain card pool that you're comfortable playing. And I wasn't even picking top tier meta decks, guys. Like I was picking decks I was comfortable playing. I played the most that week. I felt like I was like, hey, if I play these decks, they all suck against this one, and they're all really good against this one. And I know how to play them. So why don't I just
right? You're not going to run up
this
against random crazy decks.
Yeah.
You can math it out.
Yeah, you're like,
it's true.
If I see this deck, I don't want to play against it, so I'm banning Warrior. Or
Yeah.
you can go the other route and be like, I'm playing 3 decks that are all bad against Warrior, so I'm going to tech them against Warrior to beat Warrior, and then because I'm comfortable playing those decks, And then I'm going to ban the one deck that sucks to play against, which is, I don't know,
Shaman.
Crusher Shaman for whatever. Yeah. Beat your face in Shaman.
Yeah, I think it's
So-
worth a try. It'd be interesting. I don't have anything
Yeah,
around
it's a
me,
lot of
but
fun.
I'll root
We'll
for
see,
you
but-
too.
Thank you so much. But thank you, Saint,
Yep,
for
absolutely,
totally
Saint
buttering
Vicious.
us up and having us totally thinking that you're the bomb, because you are.
I'm
You
so
are.
buttered up. I'm ready for disguised toast.
Mmm. Yum.
Yeah, so one thing I just want to say at the end of the show is to kind of say, hopefully you can use the tips that we've talked about on this show to help out your friends. Because I know a lot of us have been playing for a long time, and all of this stuff is just second nature to us. And then when you try and get a friend into the game, it's like overload of all these high-level things that you want to explain to them that there's just going to be too much noise, like way too overwhelming
time.
for them to take in. You got to start with the small basics, go back to remembering what you learned at the very beginning. And these little steps that we've talked about today will hopefully ease them in. Give
Try
their
to get into
early
the
play a
realm
little.
where you're asking the players questions as opposed to giving them answers, because then they get to have the experiential knowledge of figuring it out for themselves,
Yeah.
which is great.
Just don't do
So-
what I did with my sister and go, don't do that.
You just suck.
Not
Stop
good.
it.
No, I would
Not
never
good.
say that to her, but just like try and be very gentle and encouraging so that they will be around for a long time to play with you.
That's right. That's
Or
what
if
we
you have the
want.
relationship with a brother like I do, where you're just like, Tyler, you don't do that. It's like, I'm going to do it. I'm like, you're going to lose the game if you make that play. And he lost it. And he's like, oh.
Guess I shouldn't have done that.
Like, yep.
Yeah. Sometimes you kind of have to establish that you know what you're talking about, and then they might listen to you more afterwards.
Yep. All right, Andrew, show us in a speed round how you can get involved with Velen's Chosen.
Review the show on iTunes, support us on Patreon, hang with us on Discord, chat with us on Twitter, play Hearthstone with us, request our coach your Hearthstone plays, request a collection coaching, email the show some questions, and join the Hearthstone Facebook group called The End!
If you guys don't stick out to the end of the episode, that is the Easter egg you were looking for weeks.
You know,
I just want to capture that and then play that at the end of every episode. Just be like,
that's
and
totally
go.
fine. I will say
I'm going to
that
keep it.
I will say that I consciously actually think about how can I really make this end of the show unique, because sometimes it just becomes so, you know,
It's
say
just
the same
noise.
things and stuff. And if you
Yeah.
haven't noticed, I've got a palette for the unexpected. So there's one for you and your kids to talk about one day. You can tell them about the day that Andrew was a fool and said all the
crazy.
get involved with us things in one breath. But never to be done again.
All right.
Maybe.
I will follow suit and I will go with everybody's information, just me. You can find Rob over at Instagram and Twitter.com at NotRobMay. You can find his...
Faster, Rob, faster.
Sorry, I already screwed it up. Andrew, I'm bad at this.
Sorry, man. Some people just have it. I don't know.
I'm just not cut out. I'll never hit legend with going fast on
That's
telling
right,
people about
yeah.
my stuff. All right, so you can find me over at Instagram and Twitter at NotRob. You can find my Facebook at NotRobMedia. You can ask me on Twitter for my Battle.net and my crazy time schedule over in Japan. You can find me on Twitch, never streaming, over at NotRobMay. You can find Andrew over at Twitter at Andrew is Living, and on YouTube, still trying to make content over at BinacaFreak. You can add him on Battle.net
I
at
gotta
Andrew
do
is
that.
Live number 1973 and harass him some more. You can also
I'll do
find
some
Eve
Overwatch
over at
tips.
Twitter.com.
Overwatch.
Oh, yeah, Overwatch. There we go. That's a thing. Twitter.com/Finnavar. And that is spelled FHINNOVARR. You can find her on Twitch at Evemartyn. You can add her on Battle.net and potentially give her those 80 gold quests so that she can buy more dragon cards. And that is at Kylie1919, and that's spelled KAELEIGH. You guys,
It's
this is a
actually
great show. Kaylee.
Yeah, it's
Sorry.
It's fun to
You can
make
also
sounds.
go hang out at Omnic Lab if you're interested in Overwatch. I'm over at Omnic Lab with Andres of Coin Concede Podcast. Those guys are awesome. You
I
can go hang out
accepted
with
a
me and
bunch of
Andres.
friend requests. I gotta say, like, as soon as I did that at the end of the show, I got a whole bunch of friend requests, and I haven't had a mean person yet.
Hey, that's nice.
Yeah.
I'm glad there's no people who are listening to our show just waiting to unleash the troll, you know?
You guys are a bunch of tools.
I listen to you every week, and you never talk about Deathwing, man.
Even
and
the
that one's so
worst.
good. It's a 12 for 10, man, and it's so good. You guys are bad. You're just bad. But I'm gonna keep listening
bad
to
at
you
the game because he
just to
doesn't
show
even
you.
do heroic mode.
I know, right? Man.
Oh my
I wish I would see you
gosh.
guys next week, but I'm on sabbatical for Japan, so
Hey,
I'll see you in a few weeks.
Rob-
And Andrew and Eve will hold down the fort.
Rob, we will miss you, but we'll be
will.
thinking about you a lot, and keep us updated on Twitter about how things are going, man. We know this is a huge move, and we're psyched for you, man.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, guys, that's it from us here in Exodar. We'll see you in a few weeks. Don't go crazy. We kind of did, so we did it for you. We'll see you
Whoops.
next time.
Bye.
Yeah.
I foresaw this.
Go buy our shirts on our website.
Did I miss it?
No, go to the
No, you didn't.
website.
It's still
And
there.
again,
Is this what happens when we record at 7?